Hello, Sharon. This is my thought book reflection. If you see my eye kind of darting back and forth, I have a paper that I kind of wrote everything on beforehand, which I'm reading off of to try to keep my thoughts somewhat together. So hopefully this works out as well as I planned on. So basically, when we began this thought book, I didn't know what to expect from the process. Now, I've never been one for journaling at the best of times. My writing has never been linear enough to maintain coherent thoughts in my head. I've always kind of been a scrap piece of paper kind of guy, notepads, memory, that kind of thing to keep my thoughts together. Uh, it's not the most efficient way to get my ideas across, but it's always worked in the past for me. So this was a new adventure that I partook on during this course. Uh, but I gave it a go. I settled in on using the journal, and I to try to explore my thoughts and ideas to the best of my abilities. Uh, Two journals later, after all the work that we put in with all the readings, I'm here to wrap everything up, hopefully in a nice little neat package. So here are both my journals. One is nice and colorful, the other a little more plain and normal, but they got the points across. When we started the course, you posed the question that I never really thought too deeply about. It's, what is my professional curriculum context? Now, as much as I would like to say my views of curriculum stayed the same during the whole course, I'd be lying. You gave us a lot to think about, and I originally thought this is a very straightforward question, but it turned into a very layered issue that I didn't really see beforehand. It has multiple perspectives that I never took into account, a lot of opinions that need to be considered before you really attempt to answer this question and try to find a finite conclusion. Even though that may not be possible anymore, but it definitely gave me a lot to think about in the process. The thought book assisted me in developing any new understandings because it actually helped me organize my thoughts, and I could see the changes and kind of my perceptions of where I started and how I collected them over the 3-month period. So it was kind of interesting that way, and I really enjoyed it. When I was thinking about the curriculum, I always believed that in the 21st century, we are kind of revolutionizing how the way education and curriculum are being delivered to students. We're very technological in that sense. So in a way, I was naive to think that we just kind of moved through all the issues and these things were just being solved because of how advanced we are in the 21st century. Things are new. Uh, I just always thought that the programs that we have, the way we deliver it to students, we have all this information, uh, and with all that, how can we not progress forward and solve all of these problems with all those tools? Uh, but as we worked through the course and all the different readings you gave us, a common question kept popping up in my journals and in my head. And it's, why does the curriculum move so slowly in comparison to how fast technology and stuff is going? Now, we have all this research, we have the theorists, we have theories, and at what point do we allow this knowledge to kind of transition into reality? And that would actually move forward with what people are saying. Now, it really stunned me to see how many numerous connections between some of the traditional forms of education there are in the curriculum and what are we still using as supports today. I don't understand why it's still being used and why it's possible that we see all these red flags and these errors and nothing is coming up or really changing in that sense. Now, it kind of all started in university because I was taught how to create lesson plans and unit plans, hands-on experiments, all these different teaching techniques. Now, I kind of saw these as new ways of doing things when I started teaching. Now, kind of going through this and reading all the different ways we did things in the 30s, the 40s, the 60s, and all the different time periods, it's basically we're just mimicking styles of the past again. We're doing lectures, we do rote practice, which is a big push now. We do essays with set parameters of length. 5 paragraphs is an essay. And all these things that we think they're new because they got new names, they're really just the old stuff being recycled over and over and over again. And in a sense, I've kind of realized that I'm pegging the educational machine in a sense, and instead of employing school knowledge to complicate our understandings of ourselves and the society in which we live. Teachers, like myself, are forced to instruct students to mime others. More so, their conversations, ensuring that countless classrooms are filled with forms of ventriloquism rather than intellectual exploration, wonder, and awe. That was from the Pioneer reading you gave us for 2004 on page 186. I really liked that quote because it kind of showed me that everything I've been doing and everything I believe is kind of just this repetitive machine that I'm pumping out the same information the same way that people have done generations ahead of time. Now, it was kind of brutal to face things that way because I really didn't like the fact that I'm just, I'm nothing new in a sense. But I kind of have a more realistic understanding of kind of the task ahead of us. It's daunting, it's unsolvable, and it's raised so many more questions in my head. And the big one is can the curriculum truly be fixed? Is there an actual solution at the end of the tunnel or the light? Or do we kind of have to work within what we have and create something that's more beneficial? So do we have to meet in the middle in a sense? So that's kind of something I'm going to be kind of thinking about over the next little while, and I hopefully put it into my inquiry paper as I talk about kind of the history and the progression as we go through. But what your course did, and I actually appreciated it, was it kind of questioned my role as, well, one with the masters as well as in the classroom itself. Now, I may come across with a bit of a chip on my shoulder when I came into this class because I had this view that I was going to take on the world. I was going to change everything. I was going to be that difference maker because, with a little education, a master's degree, in a way I could set the educational world on fire in a way. And I point us in the new direction and really make us, strive for success and be something great. Now, that's a vision I had in my head for a long, long time. And I thought it would be simple and easy. It's just everyone's doing it this way, so I'm going to do it this way. And now, I'm not saying that I don't want that to still be a possibility, but I've kind of humbled myself saying that maybe this is going to be a little bit harder than I originally thought. And which is good because it's going to actually make me strive and work and actually figure out what's wrong with everything. But as we kind of work through all the articles and the thought book, and I started writing and seeing, and then I see all these major issues arising more and more and more. And one of the big ones that stood out to me was how can I change a system when all these curriculum theorists or juggernauts of the past couldn't really make any major damage themselves? And the big one that I got onto was objectives. Now, we become so dependent on that Taylor, Bobbitt, Thorndike factory model, efficiency aspect that we kind of lost sight of everything. Right? And objectives kind of govern our way of life and teaching and even how we evaluate the kids themselves. And I kind of looked at this originally from saying, well, this is just the way it is, and this is what I do, which is now just, again, back to that machine where, I'm just another peg doing the same old stuff, and I'm not challenging anything. And the way it is just, when you kind of looked at it, how objectives, how they break it down into small enough pieces, it's easy to measure. And it gave us a way to give value to information, and in a way rank our students in kind of the way we're doing our jobs. I didn't like that, and the fact that we could put numbers onto what we think is education and understanding. Now that bothered me quite a bit, and it kind of been in the back of my mind for a while, but I've never really got to articulate it out before until we kind of really got into this part of the course. And now I've started to question things a little more, and I pulled the Iser quote on page 129 from the 2017 article. It could have been from the book, but they're all kind of muddled together at this point. And so I'm questioning when and where did beliefs concerning the importance of educational objectives in the curriculum development emerge? Who has formulated and argued their importance? And kind of throughout this course, I've come to kind of look at it more detail, and I'm interested in why objectives came to be the way they are. And now I understand the push of scientific efficiency, the 5-step objective analysis pushed by Bobbitt, and I understand kind of what those goals and the focus of specialization and the vocational preparation side of things. And it made sense why those things became so prominent during their time, because they needed a way to get people who weren't highly educated, they're coming back from wars, there's a high dropout rates, and they just need people to perform a job at a task. Now, and I understand that, and I can see why they wanted a very simple step-by-step program. But they didn't want people to think outside the box. And I think the way we've shifted over the last few years is we're looking for more outside the box thinkers. And the system we're using is just kind of keeping that so focused that we're not changing anything. We're just keeping producing people for the sake of producing people. And there's not anything new and engaging and, in a way, I want to say advanced in the way we're looking at things. It keeps bothering me, the fact that we say we've made so much progress technology-wise, but the way we're applying it to education is non-existent. And because I'm thinking all these things, I'm actually finding it a hard time to shut my brain down, both in the classroom and just kind of doing the readings. I keep thinking of new things, and it's bothering my wife quite a bit, actually, because she keeps telling me to shut up. But as I kind of look through the schools, and I see all these kind of injustices plaguing the system. And I'm sure most of people will be talking about these things throughout the term, and even in some of the papers and the reflections you're going to read. But it's just I can't seem to turn my mind off on why are things being done this way. An example that I'm kind of thinking right now is, so my division's just started to use common assessment techniques. So the grade 7 and 8 teachers across all the subjects are getting together, and we're creating common assessments because our grade 9 PAT scores are low for the last 2 years. Now, I can understand why they're doing it. I don't agree with it, and I feel that this is a very reactionary approach to scores that really have no pull behind them. Just because we're more of a data-driven school now with our new superintendent, that all these things are starting to change. And part of me doesn't want to be part of it and just kind of make that stand, but part of me feels I need to be part of it to ensure that I can actually make some form of an impact. And I want to be an advocate, and I want progression, and I don't want to regress back to these old styles, but I'm finding it hard to make any impact, because really, when I look at it, who am I? I'm just this teacher who's taking 4 courses in a master's program, and I come across as this outspoken individual who's challenging all these ways of years and years and years of research and styles that have worked in the past. Well, and worked, I'll put little quotations on it, but because it hasn't worked realistically. A lot of kids have been left behind and let down, and we've kind of abandoned them. But we continue to push with these basic data-driven areas. And I came back to that question now of saying, well, how can I challenge it, and who am I to say anything when all these curriculum theorists, our division leads, our specialists, and all those division heads who are responsible for this program, what makes them more qualified than I am? Just because I've taken a couple courses with a master's program that has an emphasis on assessment and curriculum, what does that mean in the large scale? And kind of a green quote from 2017 kind of popped out, and it says, "The individual, in our case, the student, will only be in a position to learn when he is committed to acting upon the world. If he is content to admire it or simply accept it as given, if he is incapable of breaking with egocentrism, he will remain alienated from himself and his own possibilities. He will wander lost and victimized upon the road. He will be unable to learn. He may be conditioned. He may be trained. He may even have some rote memory of certain elements of the curriculum, but no matter how well devised that curriculum, no matter how well adapted to the stages of his growth, learning, as disclosure, as generating structures, and engendering meanings, as achieving mastery will not occur." And that was page 156 and 157. Now that quote really stuck with me, because it just basically says if we're not able kind of to get away from that central point and commit a kid to learning, it doesn't matter how good our curriculum is, learning's not going to take place. And that's kind of the state I feel that we're in, is we're changing the curriculum, which is fine, but what are we doing to the actual students who have to learn this material? And that's what kind of the thought book really got me thinking, and saying, with all these examples of the past that have showing that we're forcing kids down a road, but we're not changing anything the way we do things. We're just, fixing it up a little bit, making it look better than what it used to look like. And I think it was Riley Taylor when he talked about how humanity is sleeping. And I really enjoyed that, because I never really looked at humanity as sleeping in a sense, but the quote was, I believe, the humanity is sleeping. By sleep, I mean a state of apathy or indifference, inactive, dormant, numb. Now, just that where they use inactive, dormant, and numb, I really, really thought was a cool way of using it, because even though we are making changes, we're not making any active changes. We're kind of staying stagnant in the history and the techniques that we know. Because we use all these technique strategies, these programs that have these fancy names and all these new special ways to teach kids, but they're the relics of old generational styles. And I've talked to many teachers who say, well, this program is literally just this program that was used 20 years ago. So what's really changing? We're just muddling the same material and knowledge, but we're just putting a different picture on it and making it look better. And we keep recycling these traditional methods, and it's kind of creating this pendulum effect where we continuously go from one extreme to the other, back and forth, and there's no middle ground found. And I think it was another quote from Riley Taylor in 2002, page 16, was, education should address a wide range of human potentials, fostering within children an awareness of their own human capacities. Now, that quote alone tells me that education should be beyond more than just facts and dates and details and processes, right? It's looking at the person as an individual, not just a product of a system that needs to be produced. And that's the problem with that factory model comes back and it's continuing to plague our society. Now, as kind of I'll get in there to the wrap up, I kind of have my third little section here called The Rise of the Spirit. Because I never really thought of the spirit as a part of education before until we started reading some of the articles, such as the Decolonizing Education or the Ecology, Spirituality, and Education. Now, but when I first kind of read it, I thought religion right off the bat, right away. That was spirituality. Mostly of it has to do with the fact that I went through Catholic school. So when you talk about spirituality, you think of religion, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and all that, all those intertwining aspects. But I never thought of kind of spirit as a more broad and general sense, kind of a spirit of the child in a sense. In a way, I kind of see how my thoughts are really, really narrow when we started this course. In a sense, I was blind to some of the realities that were around me. Now, in my ignorance, I'm trying to be humble as best I can here. In my ignorance, I only really understood two main focuses or facets of education. I saw the mind, which is kind of the primary pillar, way of collecting the knowledge, the information, to assist us in making decisions that we can conform to and use in the years ahead. Then there's the body, which is actually the physical tool that keeps us healthy and able to accomplish our tasks. Riley Taylor kind of speaks of another little section, how we often cease to see it, hear it, to feel it. We grow numb to it. I know this is true for me. And I really like that. I know this is true for me because I have played the role of the good soldier for quite a while, 7 years now, where I've kind of just, I've walked the steps. I've taught what I was supposed to teach. I didn't challenge anything. I did my report cards. I dotted my I's, crossed my T's, and made things look as good and professional as I could. Right? I never really thought that, why would I question something that's worked in the past? And as we kind of work through that thought book again, I began to see kind of how that spirit thing plays a much larger role in how we need to kind of view the child or the student themselves. I think it was Parker Palmer talks about engaged pedagogy. And the quote was, engaged pedagogy, how we are starving our students by only speaking abstractly of the mind instead of integrating the mind with the body, with the spirit. So we kind of only had a one-track mind, that linear model, the factory model. We go from A to B to C to D. And we never really thought about bringing the mind, body, and spirit all together into one. Now that quote, I believe was I think it was Bastille, I can't remember how to pronounce the name. It was from 2013, it was page 183. Now I've begun to ask myself, another quote here, how many opportunities for free space have we had with that David Jourdain? And the free space idea I really, really liked. It was a very different way to express something I've been trying to implement myself. I thought about it more and more and more. And as we were kind of doing the readings, I was making my notes and just kind of flowing through. And I just kind of looked one day and I said, how many opportunities over the years have I missed? Uh, because I never really took into account the spirit side of things, right? What have I deprived the students of that could have changed something uh, all those years I've been teaching? Now, I've been focused so much on knowledge, and knowledge as a focus has kind of been driven into me since I've been in school. Memorize this, know this, these are the steps, etc., etc. And I've kind of been perpetuating that belief to my own classroom. Uh, now, there was another quote saying, I'm not denying that knowledge is an aim of education, rather, I'm suggesting that it is but one aim, and perhaps not even the most important. I believe that was from the textbook, page 14. And this kind of was the big quote that stuck with me for quite a while. Because it challenged something that I kind of always thought was truth, in a sense, that knowledge is the pathway to success. And through all my schooling, even my parents, you need a good education, you need a good education, you need a good education. But what they kind of showed on me was education was knowing facts and numbers. If you can read, write, count, do all these things, and get good marks in that area, you know those things. And that's kind of been pushed on me, and that's my own perceptions that I put into my classroom as well. Well, you need to know this math stuff for next year. And it's as bad as a phrase it is, I've used it to the students before. Looking now, I'm kind of shaking my head at it, saying, why am I using the same quote that I was told in high school? Make sure if you don't know this, you're not going to know this for next year, and next year is going to be harder. And that's kind of not, I've kind of moved away from that because of this course, and kind of looked at saying, you know what? Yeah, they do need to know aspects of this because it's the way the curriculum's built. But what's wrong with kids finding passion and inspiration through these subjects? Why can't we use math as a way for kids to explore something they're interested in? Budgeting, taxes, credit cards, things that are real life applicable. And it's been very different because now I view kind of my own take on curriculum differently and how I can implement it in my classroom. And because I'm trying to provide a diverse learning environment for the kids, and I don't want the workbook, paper, pencil. Like, it's all important. I get it. Kids need certain skills, but why can't we focus on letting the kids learn about how to come into society, not just give them all these numbers and facts that they can regurgitate back out at some point? But that's kind of more stuff I'm reflecting on as I'm thinking more and more and more about this. Kind of my wrap up here is through the entire course, my perspectives have really shifted, or at least a minimum been challenged, which is awesome because I know I don't have all the answers, and I like to have a chip. I do have a chip on my shoulder, thinking I'm right about, and I know all the answers, which I don't. I understand that, but it's kind of always the way I've been. But the largest impact that the kind of thought book gave me is it kind of made me look at myself, and kind of made me go back and re-look over things I was going through for papers and read one thing, and I said, did I really write and think that? And no, that wasn't me. I must have wrote that. Must have been a quote. And then I go back and I'd reread, and then it'd bring me back to something else, and I'd just be like, well, no, how would I write that when I think this now? And it's really kind of changed the way I've looked at things, and it kind of, again, won't let my mind turn off, which is a terrible thing because my mind's going most of the time anyways. But it's kind of getting me frustrated as well because I see all these things and I want to make a difference and I want to impact even my school, but I don't want to be the guy that stands up and challenges everything, saying this is the way we should do it, and become an anarchist of the school. And I think one of the big challenges that this thought book has kind of created for me is how do I go about implementing change positively? And it's something I've kind of been working on little by little. But kind of bringing it back here is kind of back to my endeavor saying I'm going to change the world. Now, I never thought that this would happen overnight. And I did kind of plan on saying, well, if I'm going to do this, it's going to kind of be of a curriculum crusade in a sense. But I never really thought that it would kind of be an exploration of my own becoming. And when I saw that quote from Riley Taylor again, the quote was an exploration of my own becoming. ever opening onto possibilities for an engagement with the spirit of living. So I kind of realize now that I'm not going to change the system as a whole, but I can make a difference at the classroom level to start. Uh, Maybe school-wide, maybe division-wide, maybe bigger. I don't know. But if I do things properly and I make the proper positive choices and I bring forward the information that can benefit the schools, I can create some success that will blossom and maybe make some larger impacts, maybe not in a direct way, but through filtering down. Because I may not be the best teacher in the world. I may not know all the answers. I may not know all the best techniques, but if I can bring forward the knowledge to other people, and maybe not be me directly, maybe it's 2 generations down the line of teachers, or maybe it's 20 years from now, it's some of my ideas or my points have been pushed and they've kind of changed the way people view the system. I think that's going to be where the impact is kind of paying off in a sense. And I look forward to kind of seeing what happens with it. Hopefully I don't get kind of sidetracked and I kind of keep my mind on this area, but I have been called a squirrel at times where my mind kind of goes from place to place. So hopefully these journals kind of keep me a little more focused. But back to the curriculum side of things, I know that curriculum has kind of been set with the way of objectives, and kind of back to Green here is, as I'd like to see us starting to pay more attention to the students, because as Green says, paying too little attention to the individual in the quest of his own future is something I think we do at the moment. And we tend to focus so much on what the future is going to hold, so we don't really focus on what the kid is able to do in the present that can lead into a prosperous future. So from all of my writings, reflectings, the readings, I've learned a couple really important aspects of the curriculum. Number one is that it's not a fixed in stone concept. I think we like to think of it as how, the government says this, but you know what? Things change, governments change, views of curriculum change, and I think as long as we start picking away at kind of impacting the curriculum at a smaller level, and we do things really, really, really well, and we take advantage of things in our own way, like the free spaces that Girardin talks about, some spirituality, more child-centered, pay more of attention to that lived curriculum side of things, and many more of the little areas that we don't pay a lot of attention to. I think that if we do all those little things, we can impact the classrooms of today. And if we can impact the classrooms of today, it can change the future. Because kind of to quote Pienaar here to finish, is curriculum is not just the site of our labor. It becomes a product of our labor, changing as we are changed by it. So if we are changing and we start viewing the curriculum in different ways and applying it in different ways, then we can start to alter the view of what curriculum is and what curriculum can actually accomplish and do. So I hope this has kind of been a good little wrap up of kind of how my areas have changed. I will provide you kind of my basic write-up of what my review is. So hopefully this is a nice, simple way of you enjoying my reflections and not just reading all the time, because I think some of the final papers are going to be big enough. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, or you have concerns or questions about what points I'm trying to get across, feel free to email me. I'll respond back. Now I'll just see if I can attach this and send it to you. Have a good one.